And we are live. What's going on YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn Live? It is your man, Coach Rowe. Today is Wednesday. I'm sorry. I'm used to the Wednesday word. Look at that, Bruce. Wednesday. Today is Tuesday. I've lost track of the week. Today is Tuesday, and it is time for another session of the Men's Circle. As always, I like to jump straight into the topic. So let's jump straight in. Tonight's topic on, let me change that color right there. Bam. Tonight's topic on the Men's Circle is going to be poor communication. Speaking of poor communication or unfortunate communication, when we were going to do this show 3 weeks ago, I got some news that shifted my focus from Men's Circle to take care of life situations. And because of that, this is why we're on this particular session of the Men's Circle being a replay or a relaunch of poor communication. That being said, this will be the year's last Men's Circle. As we head into like the holidays, it becomes hard to coordinate groups of people together because everybody's running east, west, north, south. And so this will be the last session of the Men's Circle for this year. We will pick back up in 2024. Don't worry, we're not going anywhere. Just taking a quick little break so that people can spend time with what matters most, their family. So with that, let's get into tonight's topic. I'm going to have you guys introduce yourselves really briefly. And when you introduce yourself, as always, when we talk about a topic, we like to talk about what the topic means to us. So, Bruce, I'm going to have you go first. First in, first out.
All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Bruce Gatewood. If you've seen the show before, you know I'm not new here. Me and Billy go way back. Poor communication to me is like when I thought about the topic, I thought, what can shake the foundation? What are some of the things that could really penetrate, shift the foundation of whatever relationship, be it work, be it friendship, be it spouse, be it even your kids. And I think that's what poor communication is to me. Poor communication is foundation shifting. Well, that's pretty much the first thought that came to my mind. That's kind of where I went with it.
All right, shifted the foundation. Art, you were in next. What does the topic poor communication mean to you?
Well, what up, my peeps? It's Art. Been here a couple times, enjoying, loving it. I'm gonna miss it for the next couple months. I'm not sure what I'm gonna do with myself. You know what I mean? But poor communication overall is just either something that you don't understand the true meaning of what that person is stating, or the vice versa, where you're not interpreting or clearly projecting the message that you are trying to project, right? For an example, we all know, hey, honey, where do you want to go eat? Oh, baby, wherever you want. All right, cool. Let's go do Mexican. Do you really want to? That's the kind of messaging, you know what I mean? Tim, you're next.
Yeah, I feel it. Go ahead, brother Tim.
It's funny when I seen that. The first thing I thought of is a couple things. One, I think of poor communication as kind of like the thief of peace, right? Because when you want to challenge somebody, you're kind of prepared for that confrontation or the assertiveness in which you put forth. But sometimes when communication is poorly, it could start something you didn't intend to. And so you could be on your merry little way and somebody reads a text wrong. They read too much into a word because you didn't fully explain. And now you're in a situation that you didn't foresee coming. So that's the first thing out there. The second thing I thought of is kind of it's an old Jerry Seinfeld bit where he talks about people that carry guns. A lot of people carry guns because they're not the best communicators. They've had one too many misunderstandings, and that's why people get shot. Is they under misunderstandings. So it made me think of that too. Is how it's the fuse on a stick of dynamite that you didn't know was there, because it could start something out of nowhere from something. It's different to be intentional when you want to attack something. It's a lot different when you're the one having stuff blown up on you when you didn't know it was there.
No, I like that. That is the thief of peace. And so, additionally, when we were going to have this conversation. It was really interesting because my wife and I had a conversation before this show was initially or originally supposed to air. And it was one of those situations where I believe I'm a good communicator, but at the same time, I'm not perfect at communication. And the poor communication incident wasn't really gotta like in hindsight, looking at the totality of the event, the poor communication wasn't my wife's communication. It was my going back to what Art said, my interpretation of what she was communicating. She communicated it clearly. She communicated her intent. She communicated all these things up front, and still my interpretation was we're under attack. Batten down the hatches, erect the walls, and get the cannons lit because we about to go to war. So um, when I think about this topic, poor communication, I think about it actually in almost like 3 or 4 categories. The first category of communication that I was thinking about when it comes to poor communication is our own internal communication, like how we communicate with ourselves, whether we're beating ourselves up, oh, we're stupid, we're dumb, we're this, we're that. I just came out of a parent teacher conference with for my youngest son, and one of the things this teacher told us was like, hey, look, your son has 3 A's and 3 B's. He could easily be a straight A student. The challenge is that he is so confident in his ability that he's like, practice, why are we practicing? I understand this already. The problem is he's not, he has different ways of solving problems that get him the answer, the solution, but it's not according to the standardized testing. So because it's not according to the standardized testing, he can still sometimes make errors and get things wrong. And so there's that internal communication that he has. And I was just thinking as I'm sitting and listening to his teacher, I'm like, yeah, he's definitely my son. Because yeah, if I know something, I know it. And it's really difficult to convince me to do something to act like I know it. Like, oh, if you do it this way over here, then and you act like it, then now we'll know that you know it. No, I know it. And that doesn't mean that I'm not willing to receive feedback, but the things that I know, and the things that I don't know, or the things that I'm unsure of, I'm willing to do the research and I'm willing to get that feedback to improve myself. So there's that internal communication aspect, and sometimes that's poor on our side to ourselves. Then there's the external communication aspect, and I broke it down into different categories. The first category, I think, since we're all in relationships, is like with our partner, how that communication takes place. And when I started writing about this particular topic, I was thinking like, man, you know what? You got to make a decision when you're communicating externally if you want to get your message out or if you want to get your message across. And the out is I'm going to yell louder than you. I'm going to talk over you. I'm going to make you have to hear me. That's getting my message out. But to get your message across is to make sure that there's interpretation taking place on the other side. And even in the situation that my wife and I were in, it was like, she was really trying to get her message across. She's trying to get across how she felt. And in that, it was like, I was in a space where it was like, wait, what are we, getting my Kung Fu Jones ready? What are we getting ready to go into? Because I'm fluent in the linguistic jiu-jitsu of disarming people. so there's that message, getting your message out and or your message across. And I think where we as men, where we run into poor communication is typically when someone else is trying to get their message out, or even when we're trying to get our message across. When someone else is trying to get their message across to us, or we're trying to get our message across to them, we perceive it as a teaching moment. Like, I'm going to teach you in this moment. And sometimes that poor communication is right now is not the time to teach. Right now is the time to say, hey, let's not do this way today. We can talk about it later about like why. If you're talking to your child, if you're talking to your partner, hey babe, do you mind if we just go to Mexican for tonight and then tomorrow you can pick where we go, right? That's getting your message out, because The teaching moment is where we feel, at least for me, I feel like as a man, the teaching moment is, babe, you always ask me, where do I want to go? Or I ask you, where do you want to go? You tell me it doesn't matter. Then I give you a suggestion and you turn down my suggestion. What is it? Does it not matter? Or do you have somewhere that you don't want to go and there's some certain categories that you're willing to go to? That's the teaching moment. But if you start that teaching moment in that moment, it typically becomes an argument. So there's poor communication that way. And then the third category of poor communication really is, I was thinking about us as men and why we fight, like why we throw hands. I was thinking about this from the perspective of, if you ask the average man, he probably doesn't want to fight. I don't want my knuckles to be hurting. I don't want to break my hand. I don't want to get hit in the eye. I don't want to be sore tomorrow. I don't want to pull a muscle. Like there's a lot of stuff that comes with fighting that I'm just not interested in. Now, am I willing to fight if I have to? Absolutely.
Hey, I don't mean to interrupt you, but you know you old, bro. When one of the prerequisites, am I gonna pull a muscle? Come on, man.
You might throw that right, and it might pull everything.
Yeah.
I didn't stretch this morning. Right?
You like, hey, I know you don't want none. I know you don't.
That is hilarious. I'm sorry.
Lap around the block and get warmed up. I'll be right back.
Right.
Be here when I get back.
Jog. When I get back, it's on and popping. So there's the aspect of us as men, though, when it comes to poor communication. And I think sometimes it is the breakdown of our communication and the frustration that comes with that breakdown that leads us to act physically, like to get into physical altercations. So I was thinking about those three topics, but really at the end of the day, this topic to me about poor communication from the perspective of a man, father, partner, son, whatever, is really about getting my message across to people. And how can I improve and become more effective at getting my message across to people so that it's reaching the audience versus berating the audience with an all-out assault. So that's what I got. So I would ask, I want an honest opinion from each of you, or honest assessment from each of you. How would you rate yourself when it comes to communication? Let's do a scale 1 to 10.
Well, I feel like that's a two-part question, because I feel like if we're talking about when it comes to communication with me communicating, I would say I'm somewhere around a 9, right? But if it comes to me receiving communication, sometimes depending on the situation and the messenger, that number is a range. It's not even definite. That number's a range, and it's somewhere between 5 and 8. You know what I mean? I don't mean, I'm just being honest. It depends on the situation and the messenger.
So your struggle, you would say that in communication is reception.
Well, yes, especially when I feel like my message is not getting across, and because again, I'm a clear communicator, man. I'm not afraid to tell you how I feel, what I want, what I need, or any of those things, right? So when I feel like my message isn't getting across and I know I'm doing a great job, that amplifies my inability to receive what the hell you're saying, right? Like if you misunderstand what I'm saying and I get it and I hear it, it definitely makes it harder for me to receive what you're saying. And I understand that that's a Bruce flaw. Like that is a Bruce thing. It's something that I'm actively working on, but it is what it is.
Tim, Art?
You want to go, Art? I'll go. I think
I have the talent to be a 10, but I'm a 7.5. Because
I do.
It's funny because I see my flaws sometimes. I'll give you like an example. So Noah was doing something. I don't remember what the exact thing was. And I was like, hey, what did I tell you to do? And he said, you said do this. And I was like, no, I told you to do it exactly like I said.
You took it upon yourself
to interpret what you thought I meant. And he was like, all right. And then I misspoke one time and I was like, you know what I meant? And he's like, nah. You said to go exactly what you say. So which one is it? And I was like, you know what? You're right. You're right. So it's knowing when to. I'm getting better at learning my audience and know who I need to go by the numbers with, and I'm learning how more now who I can just give the idea to and then trust them to kind of run with it. But I am getting better with that. But the other drawback that I have is I do have an issue with my patience level with clear communication.
I'll give you an example.
I'm going through a process with this. I'm a supervisor, so I'm going through a process where I'm reviewing somebody. I have to go through a review process for somebody for termination because she did some
Shady stuff at work. I met with her a month ago, and I said, I'm seeing
these behaviors surface. If they continue, this is a code of conduct thing.
And she goes, okay,
all right, okay. It's like that scene in Reservoir Dogs where he says, "Put your hands on the hood, on the steering wheel," and he keeps reaching for the glove box. Like, okay. He's like, "No, I'm gonna shoot you, buddy. If you don't put your hands." I felt like that, so I'm telling her this stuff, and lo and behold, I have to review her again, and the behaviors are there. And so part of my process, I have to ask her, help me understand what happened. And she's telling me all these things. She says, I can't afford to lose my job. And I'm like, I have to filter myself because in my head, I'm thinking, only if somebody would have told you exactly how to avoid the situation a month ago. And if you would have listened, you'd been good.
So the fact that I
ran that through a filter process, I showed as a sign of progress. So I'll say 7.5 with potential to still grow. And that's the cruel, and I think about this, Ro. I think this is kind of like the cruel thing of life. The cruel joke of life is that by the time you're old enough to be wise, your body's no longer able to execute all the knowledge that you learn. So it's like a weird, messed up joke of life. Like, I know more about all the sports I used to play as a kid. If I could take this knowledge and go back into that body, I don't know. Who knows?
To the league.
not the NBA because 5'9.25" ain't getting it.
Tim, I love how you said that. I think that, and I'm sorry to cut you off, but
no, you're good.
What you just said is like that. It resonates with me so much, and that's why I'm constantly on my kids because I can't go back, right? I don't get to go back with all of this knowledge that I have now. But what I can do is provide you guys with the perfect tool belt so y'all can avoid the bullshit, right? Like that's my time machine in a sense, right? So when my kids do things that I've already walked that path, I already went down that line. It's not just dad, ruining your good time. It's dad trying to go back. It's me trying to relive because I've already made that mistake. I don't get to go back and redo it, but I can prevent you from doing it, and that's close enough for me. That was fantastic what you said,
Tim. And you're right, and it's like, and that's where a lot of frustration comes from too, because it's like, remember that movie, The Butterfly Effect, where he's going in the past and he's like, "No, don't do it," and they can't hear him, they don't see him, and they continue. That's what it feels like with your kids sometimes, because it feels like you're like, "Look, I know how that story ends. I know where that goes. You don't learn through me telling you. Please don't have to go through it." And then they're like, they don't hear you, and it's like, and like, "No, don't go." And there they go.
And they do it anyway. And like I just had a situation with my youngest. She went on a senior trip. There's situations with girls, teenage girls, high school blah. It's all buffoonery. And I told her, baby, you shouldn't even go. Yeah, Dad, I hear you. Woo, woo, woo. Went anyway. Now, fast forward to yesterday, she comes home. Now I got to look at the tears in your face. I have to sit here and address your sadness. Your sadness is killing me. And it's not a situation to where I can be like, see, told you so, because that's an asshole move. I'm not going to do that.
I mean, that's what Ro was talking about. That's not the teaching moment.
Right. And so as I'm consoling my baby and loving on her and trying to give her all the good and the light, I'm thinking in my head, though, we could have avoided
all this.
We didn't even. And that's what I told my wife. Me and my wife had the conversation. I know y'all don't like listening to Pops because all I do is ruin the fun. But babe, we didn't have to do this. That hurt. She could have avoided that hurt.
Art, what you got? What number are you when it comes to communication?
Shoot, man, I think it's time to call it a night, bro. I gotta go to bed. You know what I mean? I'm not gonna lie, man. I'm just gonna say 5s across the board, bro. Because there's times where like just depending on the situation, especially when it comes down to the kids, and you've already addressed the situation many times before, you're just talking to talk at that point. It's like there's the reminder again. Why do I like Bruce said in a sense, it's like I don't want to be the party killer, but again, why? You know what I mean? Why do I have to be that bad guy? But it goes back to, it's just sometimes my mind just runs off really quick, like blah 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 blah, and my mouth is just trying to catch up to what my mind is thinking, and so that's why at times, or when my wife is telling me something, like I'm already trying to jump ahead to get to where the finish line is at or the conclusion before she even finishes it. You know what I mean? So it's like I believe us men think in the sense of logic of what's the equation, and then at the end what's the multiple choice of that said equation. But ladies think with emotion, or I don't know what they think. You know what I mean?
I use the term feelings. Yeah, Bruce, feelings.
The big F word.
Hell.
The big F word, feelings and emotions. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and to go back to a little bit to what Bruce has said in regards to like, living or telling your kids to prevent them from creating those mistakes. It's like sometimes females or wives or daughters don't understand that we're actually protecting them by telling them our scenarios, because I'm not gonna lie, I was young once and I was a dog, you know what I mean? I know I roam the streets looking for stuff, and I know how to pounce on the prey, right? You know what I mean? So
right.
When you see those things, it's kind of like, look, babe, hon, keep an eye out for this, watch that, watch. But he's not like you. He's not gonna do the things you say you did.
Everybody's like you, Dad.
Right. You are right.
All of
Not
turned out to
everybody
be
will
like
tell you this truth. You're right. So 5s across the board. Really quick, I have in the chat, Glenn. What's going on, Glenn Davis? It says, I thought I was a 9 until my wife and I had a quick conversation on communication last week. Yeah, I think though you bring up a great point, Glenn. When it comes to communication, we can always measure ourselves, right? We can measure what we think we are, but I believe that the true measure of our communication is in how others are able to accurately interpret the things that we tell them. So going back to you, Tim, when you were saying, I told Noah this, said, do exactly what I say, and he didn't. Well, there's only two things that can be happening. Either he's doing whatever he wants to do, right? Which is kids sometimes, or what he interpreted was there was space for him to make some decisions in that process. And sometimes it's something as simple as saying, hey, I want you to do this exactly what I say. Don't change anything. Like that little part, do exactly what I say, don't change anything, makes it like, hey, there's no wiggle room in here for what you do. There is no A or an 8.1 or an 8.2. It's just A. I want you to do A. I want you to do B, and I want you to do C. That's what I want you to do. And so when I started thinking about how I would rate myself as a communicator, I agree with you, Bruce, that there are different aspects of my communication that I'm pretty up there, like 8, 9 level, Jedi Master, right? But then there's other levels where it's like I'm in kindergarten. That's my pencil, mine. And part of my struggle with communication is I really want, this is probably my desire, I want all communication to be a teaching moment for me and for the person that's communicating. That's what I want. But the reality is like I said, do you want to get your message out or do you want to get your message across? I'm learning in that part of communication where I'm like a 2, a 3. I'm learning to be able to step back, and instead of giving a kid a lecture, hey, look, my son asked me a couple days back, or maybe a couple weeks back, hey, how was your day? And I was like, oh, well, I got caught up in a layoff. And he was like, oh. And I just kind of told him a little bit about it. And this is why it's important when you're working in an organization to, or you're leaving, departing another organization, that you don't burn your bridges. And having that conversation with him, I made it very quick instead of like, and this goes to that, and this goes to that, and this goes to that. Look, I'm not about to teach you about the whole human anatomy in 50 minutes. That's not going to happen. So being willing to say, hey, this is a teaching moment, but I'm not going to make it a lecture, in the sense of, we all know what a lecture is when we've been lectured by our parents or lectured by people who we don't even care about their opinion. It's like, hey, why are you lecturing me? I don't want to live the life that you live. So why would I take your advice?
Your son's a dope.
Bean, I don't want to listen to you, right?
Right. Don't fall in that trap, young blood. I don't know if you know this, but
See, Billy, I think that's something that you said that I struggle with, right? And I think my kids especially feel the full brunt of what I'm going to say next, in terms of, you said, going back to what you said, do exactly what I say. And then you said, you add at the end, don't change anything. Well, my problem is expectation then. That's probably another one of my communication issues, because if I say to my children, do exactly what I say, there's no reason for me to say don't add it, don't do anything. Exactly what I say is the mess. Like the word exactly, that right there is the expectation.
carbon copy.
Right. So if I need to say extra at the end, we're going to have a communication issue, because I'll feel like that 9 Jedi mind, I said exactly what I wanted you to do. And I even said exactly. That's crazy. So the fact that you deviated from the plan makes you an asshole, not me, because I told you what I wanted and I told you what I expected, right? So when I hear you say that, that makes me think to myself, well, damn, maybe should I be adding a little extra? My wife said one time to me when I said this, and it's changed the way I communicate with my children. She said, Bruce, your problem is you talk to your children like they're smart, which they are. My kids are exceptional, right? Every parent says that, but for real, my kids are pretty dope. She said, but you got to talk to them like they're stupid. You know, you got to try it, because you're expecting them to understand you on a level of higher intelligence. Like you said, what'd you say, Tim? Some people you can just float the idea out there and let them, go. And that's how I was running it, right? That's how I was running it. You guys are smart enough. I know where we all come from. I know what we're doing here. But in reality, putting that extra expectation on them led to my frustration, right? As opposed to, maybe like you said, just add that and don't deviate. Exactly how I said, don't change nothing or whatever, right? So that's interesting as hell. That's interesting. That's something I can take away and maybe try that, especially as I get older. I want my peace, man. I want my. So if I got to add a little extra, if I got to do a little bit more just to make sure I can secure the peace, maybe that's something I have to seriously look into.
Right.
Thank you
That's
for
the
that. That's
return
good.
on investment, is adding that little bit of sauce at the end. It's like with the commercial, a dollop of Daisy, right? A dollop of sour cream is not changing a recipe, but that little dollop of sour cream, when you got a little bit, you could just take a bit with a little bite. It changes the bite, right? It changes the bite. It doesn't change the recipe, changes the bite. And adding that little bit, the return on investment is, okay, I know now, even if my kid does deviate, right? I added the extra and they still deviated. I know that I made an honest effort to communicate above and beyond just what I expect of you, right? Because I expected you to get it when I told you exactly, but I told you not to change anything to make sure you understood what I meant by exactly. Now, the fact that you changed it, now we can have a different conversation. I was talking to somebody the other day about a decision that they made. And in the decision, they were like, I thought I told you about it. I said, here's the thing, it's not about you telling me, it's about us agreeing. If you would have told me, I thought that you and I agreed, then we have a different conversation about, hey, at what conversation did we have where you felt like we came into agreement, right? But you just thinking that you told me something, whether you told me or not, that's not the prerequisite. The prerequisite is agreement, not you telling me. And because there is no agreement, I don't care what you tell me until we agree on something. It's not agreed upon. I said, but I can take a conversation where you tell me I thought we agreed, and say, okay, when we were having this conversation where you thought we were in agreement, that was not agreement. I now understand that you might perceive that as agreement. So I'll be more clear with you on, hey, this is what we're agreeing to, right? Like I will always end our conversations with, this is what we agreed to, correct? So that way we now both have what agreement is. But because there was no conversation on agreement, and it was like, I thought I told you, it was like, well, no, you can't tell me anything. We have to agree to it. And in that, it's like I'm seeing a side of communication that has been challenging for me, like from being a child to present, where I and it might because of the volatility in the household that I was in when I was growing up, but I was just like, yo, if I told you something and then you or somebody else told you something and you still arbitrarily are making decisions that create frustration in me, I'm not coming to you in a kind, calm, concise voice. I would be in the rafters, like, what are we doing? And I'm seeing that growth in me. The challenge, here's where the challenge is, and this is what I think for me will be my benchmark on mastery. So this year's word is fluency, but mastery of communication is when the person closest to you, you can communicate with them effectively, and all of the grace and the concessions and understanding that you give all these exterior people who are not as close to you, you can give that to the person. And that's where, for me, when we were talking about when this topic came up, the situation I was having with my wife, it was like, why didn't I offer grace in that? Why didn't I just say, okay, I hear you. This is what you wanted to share. And I could have said, do you want me to respond? This is a simple communication question. Do you want me to respond, or did you just want to share that with me? Getting to that space is challenging because I think, going back to art, we're protectors and we're fixers. How can I protect it? How can I fix it? So if you're telling me, apparently I have to fix it. And in communication, especially with my wife, I'm learning sometimes she just wants to provide insight to her feelings. She's not asking me to fix her feelings. For a man, that's really difficult because we're typically not going to give you insight to our feelings unless we're like, hey, yo, what you did hurt me. I need you to not do that. That's the fix, right? I'm learning with my wife, and maybe not all women, but at least with my wife, that she can say, hey, what you did hurt me, or what I'm dealing with hurts, but she's not asking me to come in and repair that or to prove that she shouldn't be hurt. And that's a big challenge for men. I'll go ahead, Bruce.
Bro, you are preaching right now. My wife says that to me all the time. It's like, and my kids too. I have two daughters, and it's like, if you come to dad, we're gonna get right to fixing it. And I tell them all the time, especially my children, when you come and talk to me, I'm going to give you 100% the truth and how I feel about the situation. I'll always be honest with you. But if you want someone to sit in your feelings and bask in the emotions of it, you need to go talk to your mother, because I was not raised like that. I think that's the biggest hurdle with me and my wife. I've been a fixer since I can remember, because there was always something that needed to be fixed, right? So trying to decipher, are you just venting with me? Is this something that I need to take care of? It's 21 years in January, man. That's probably the hardest thing about marriage for me, is knowing when to shut that off. And it goes back to what I be talking about in terms when you told me to, what do you rate yourself? Well, when I'm receiving communication, it's weak. It's really low. It's low on the scale, and there's a range, like I said, because when you're talking, I don't know what you want. And when and like you said, when I tell you something, I definitely want action. I'm not talking about nothing that don't need no action. Why are we talking about it? Because I'm a man, and that's how I feel. And I'm trying to be better at that, because they say it all the time. Well, Dad, you don't care. Well, it's not that I don't care. It's more that, is this life shattering? I am more of a, let's get to, I don't know. Sitting around in my feelings ain't never got me nowhere. And I'm a sensitive ass dude, right? So I do sit around in my feelings, but when I share my feelings with you, it's because we need action, or I need help or something. It's not, well, I just want you to know. Like so that's weird, Billy. It's not just your wife. I have 3 women in my house. It's
I can help you with a little bit.
Something that I learned about that. What really helps me is sometimes I'll ask my wife, "Hey, do you want my opinion, or do you want me to just bend an ear for you?" And she'll tell me, "Oh no, like kind of what you said, Billy. I don't need you to solve it. I'm just irritated or whatever." What often really works well in that is being able to give her some empathy and relate to her. Like, for instance, she came home today.
And she goes, "My coworkers really irritate me." And I'm like, "Why?
What's up?" She goes,
She told me that I should have made a copy of
something when we don't really do that as part of our protocol. So why would I know instinctively just to do this in this one instant? But she was like, "Yeah, you should do that." Because apparently maybe something got misplaced down the line. But
and then she said,
on top of that, when she was eating her snack, she was chewing hella loud. And I was like, so what I told her, I was like, damn, it's like she has the playbook on what irritates you. Am I right? And she goes, I know. And she just needed to get it out,
so she could decompress and relax.
I'm sorry. I'll tell a funny, because I know my sister. I know that's one of her pet peeves.
Yeah. So
it's fun, and I think you're hitting on something, Bruce.
It is definitely, and
all of you really, it is definitely the emotion behind things. Like my nephew and my niece, who are 15 months apart, they're going through something right now. They're going through a bit of a disagreement, and he's perplexed because he's telling me, "Unc, I never said the things that she said that I said." And I was like, "Nephew, I don't think that you said those things, because it doesn't make sense for you to say it. However, what she's saying you said is not really what you said. It's what she felt from what you said."
So something along
the lines of your communication made her feel those things that she's saying, and you're getting caught up in the facts of the case. And I used kind of what you said, Billy. What I told him is, do you want to win the case, or do you want to have your sister back?
Which one of those
do you want?
Because you could say, you could get a not guilty
based on all the like I didn't say that. The record, let the record show. You could do all that, but what do you want? Do you want to win, or do you want your sister back? And you want her to feel like she could be heard? Because what I told him was, what y'all never really found out is y'all never found out how to talk to each other without being teenagers. So when you grow up and become more mature adults, that's fine and dandy. It's fine to still have that
teenage type
relationship with your sibling when things are good. But when things aren't good, you relate back to what you did when you were a teenager. Like, man, shut your punk ass up. And you get
disrespectful for each other.
But that shit lands harder when you're older.
You take more of a slight to it when you're older. And he was like, damn, I never
really thought about it. I was like, yeah, you probably need to get with her and say, hey, let's forget the apologies. Let's be better from now on for each other. I got to get better too. Let's figure out how we talk to each other at this stage of our lives. So it's funny that the feelings thing came up, because my niece ain't gonna make some shit up, and I know my nephew didn't say this stuff, but she definitely felt the way she felt based on something that he said. And the other thing about when we make it really hard for us, and I got to throw this out there because maybe it's just my wife. I love my wife when she tells a story.
It's like what's that movie called? Memento.
It's like she gets me up to a point, and then I got to flash back to 2 weeks before the start of the story, and then we flash back. But it's funny, I've gotten to the point to where I actually enjoy that now because the look on her face is like I've learned how to separate, like she's not asking for me to solve whatever she's going on. She's just looking to share. So when I look at her face and she has like this glee of being able to load this on me, I look at it as like she feels good enough to with me where she could share this with me. I'll take that, and then I'll just kind of laugh with her, and I'll just put myself in a position where I felt similar to her. Like, yeah, I get how that feels, and I just relate to her because she's a smart woman, man. And that's she don't need me to solve all her problems, which is another thing I've been learning as I got older. Is I love to lecture, I love to teach, I love to give life lessons, but I've been learning when to pick my battles with that. What hill do I want to die on? Is the dishes that important for that? Is the, you know what I mean? Because if you're lecturing all the time, are they going to remember the lectures that really mean something? Or are they going, oh, here he goes. This sounds just like when he talked about the dishes. This sounds just like when he talked about me cleaning my room. Uh, so don't do drugs. Okay. That sounds just like all this other bullshit you said. So being careful not to burn um, your equity with that lecture is important too. So
Yeah.
I bought you enough time, Art. We're to you, bud. What you got, Art?
Nah, my thing is like, especially wife wise, you know what I mean? When they set you up, you know what I mean? Like when my wife usually comes up says, "Hey, I'm kind of stressed out, and I just need to vent." All right, cool. So she'll start telling me whatever's on her mind, and I'll come up with the occasional, okay, you know, and then 2 3 minutes into the story, well, what do you think I should do? What? Like, I thought you were just here to vent. I wasn't paying attention. You see how you are? You see I can't come talk to you? Wait a minute. You told me you wanted to vent. I said okay.
It was a setup. She was testing to see if I tell him vent, will he pay attention to what I gotta say?
Right.
And will he have insight? Yeah, she said the fix was in, Art.
The setup was real, bro. The setup was real.
No, but it's funny that we do that from sometimes because I don't know about your guys' brain, but my brain is always working on problems and trying to create solutions. So like if I'm not actively engaged in a conversation like this, then I'm like, okay, this is what I have to work on. Like before we got on, I was like, okay, I got to figure out what the password is to this cell phone, and I
Oh
can only
yeah,
try.
I felt that from you, Billy, and it's sad, bro. It's sad. It makes me feel like unappreciated, bro. I'm over here having a good time with you, and you're just like,
No. When
like
I'm
really,
engaged in a conversation, I'm
really, I'm
engaged.
right here, buddy.
When I'm not engaged though, because again, if it's like you said, or if you want me to vent, right? If you want to vent, cool, vent. But I'm I don't know where there's a vent above my head. It vents cool air, it vents hot air. I don't have to pay attention to it, and that's the problem with venting. Um, but the challenge that I have is I'm pretty direct. Like if something like I remember when my wife and I first got together, and she still tells me this to this day. She was like, "You literally told me you weren't interested in what I do." And her field is in law. I'm not in the legal field. And so when somebody comes and starts telling me a bunch of things, whether it's good things that happen, bad things that happen, crazy things that happen in the legal field, it's like, yo, I don't know if you know this, but I got enough stuff going on in my own mind without adding other other sources of information that I'm going to have to rectify because I'm going to be the person who looks it up on Google and says, okay, so is this supposed to happen? Is that supposed to happen? How do they get off from that? How did they get off from that? And it's like, but I'm not even interested in those things. But I was watching this video on Instagram. It was a very short clip, but it was a video about a guy, and he was saying, the mind of men versus the mind of women. When you go to a man, he was talking about mansplaining. He said, in the corporate world, when a man goes to a person that he respects or cares about and he wants to mentor them, he will give them the process. Here's step one. If you're an apprentice and we're welding, here's how you get your connecting metal. Here's how hot your torch is, yada, yada, yada. He'll give you all the steps, right? And when he's communicating with other men will typically say, oh yeah, I know that part. Just kind of fast forward to this part, the part that I don't know. Like, hey, I know about the metals. I know about the weld temperature. I know about the safety. Hey, let's get to this part that I don't know about. So we'll fast forward with each other and we're okay with that. Oh yeah. I know. And then we'll get to the part that we don't know. But what he was saying in typically in corporate America, with what happens when a man is speaking with a woman, is the woman will listen out of courtesy to all the parts that she knows and the parts that she doesn't know. And so the man tends to think, hey, you know what? I just did this lady a solid. She didn't know a whole lot, but I taught her everything that I know. Not realizing that she knew half of the stuff that you were telling her. She just didn't interrupt you and tell you, hey, fast forward to the good part, right? And so for us as men, because I struggle with this with my wife when we're communicating, she says, you're not listening. You don't listen to me. You don't listen to me. And it's like, look, if you're saying A, B, I'm gonna assume the next thing is C. So we don't have to get to C, D, E. Okay, what part of the alphabet are we stopping on? Just let me know that so we can get to that. Wrap it up. But that doesn't serve communication well for me and my wife, because now where my wife feels like she's not heard, and I'm like, hey, I'm just trying to make this an efficient conversation. Like, I'm all about efficiency. Let's get to the parts that you need, or what are you trying to tell me? Like, get to that. I don't need the backstory. Just get to the main plot. Like, let's get to the climax as fast as we can. So I was thinking about that clip when it comes to communication, and it is a significant factor for me in my communication, the way that I communicate, to where I actually have to begin to start to slow myself down, because I'm moving so fast that I forget if it was a cartoon or a Dave Chappelle skit where it was like the jump to conclusions, Matt. I'm jumping to so many conclusions that I'm like jump to 7 different conclusions, and she's still at stage A. And if any of those conclusions that I jump to are wrong, then I landed in the wrong place. And so I'm really trying to work on pulling the throttle back and saying, okay, I know how fast I want to go in this conversation and with this communication, but it's not my turn to communicate. So I need to allow the person who is behind the wheel and has their foot on the gas pedal to dictate how fast we're going. That's what I got. That's all I got.
I feel like I need to work on, because my kids and my wife don't say I don't listen. I wish they said I don't listen, because that sounds better for me. But they say you don't care. You don't care. And it's weird. It's like two-pronged, because you're not wrong, but you're not completely right. When y'all come and talk to me about wigs and weaves and eyelashes, and I've been a girl dad for 19 years. We've been Dora the Explorer, Hello Kitty. Like, we've been doing that shit for a long time. So you're right. Part of me doesn't care, right? Like, because of something you said, Billy. There's so many pressures and so many thoughts and so many things that I have going on inside my head. I wonder, is there a woman's circle out there right now thinking about the fact that their men have those pressures and those thoughts? And I know my kids don't care. They're getting older now and they understand it now that they're seeing the real world. They work, they understand it. But this is like accumulated trauma. Like, is how I look at it. I've been listening to y'all's bullshit stories for years, right? No, I don't care. And I'm terrible about it. And I want to be better. And my problem is, it's not only that I don't care, my face. They know, boy. And I'm like, okay, okay. My daughter came home the other day and she was telling the story, this long, just drawn out story about work. And I'm just like, fuck, please get to the point. Like, so it was a bad day at work, huh, honey? I don't know how to... and it's something I have to work on. I have to absolutely, because like you said, they just want you to relate to them. They want, the empathy. They want, and it's cool because my kids will come to me. We talk about everything, like all kinds of shit, right? And that's great. So I know that I've done something right, but some part of it makes me feel some kind of way when they always go to their mom, and I got to get the story secondhand from their mom. But then it's like, well, who are you mad at? Because you've already put up your walls to where when they come and talk to you, if it's not about something life changing or important, they know you don't care. So who are you mad at, Bruce? Type shit. It's wild. It's one of my flaws that I got to work on.
Well, I think that's a good lead in really quick. I know you could probably answer the first, but that's a good lead into this question. How do we correct or improve our communication?
I'll leave with that.
I'll leave with that. So that kind of goes into what I was going to talk about anyway. What I am discovering,
if you want to go by the letter of the law, there's a problem with the communication
from the other side, because they say words, but they think what they really mean is what they feel about certain things.
So I've gotten better
at how I improve that is when I'm
getting vented towards. How
does that make you feel?
How do you feel about that? How do you feel
that's going to go, or how do you think that's going? Stuff to just to be engaged.
If they're telling you it, and this is what I, especially dealing with women, if they're
taking the time to tell you,
they're expecting you
to have an understanding, or at least try to understand where they're coming from on an emotional basis. The fact that they still attempt that with you means that they see hope in you in that. So that's a good thing. If they didn't, they wouldn't.
No matter how hopeless you are.
This dude don't got no shot in understanding at all. So they're coming to you because they don't know how to say it, but they want you to be like, okay, so man, that happened at work. Man, how'd you feel about that?
How often does
she act like that at work? And then after a while, if they just feel like they're dumping on you, like, man, you told me about this quite a bit. Couldn't be me. And then you just move on. And what do you mean it couldn't be you? Well, do you know what I want to do, or are you just going to keep doing what you're doing? Well, what would you do? Well, I'd look for another job, or I'd do this, that, and the other. I'd get the hell out of there, because if that person's my boss and she's a psychopath, I'm going to change before she does,
Right.
So the improving the communication is, I've really been working on of listening and being willing to accept what somebody has to say, and removing my pride about it. Because sometimes people will say something to me and I'm like, you know what, shit, that's a better idea than what I had going on. That wasn't always Tim. Usually it was always, let me poke holes in why your shit sucks and why my shit is the bomb.
Right.
You know what I mean? And then sometimes it's like, you know what, I like that. I was thinking this. What do you think about that? And now it's, maybe we have an amalgam of what our two ideas were, and it's better than what both of our ideas were individually. So being a little bit more collaborative, understanding. I've gotten out of you didn't say that. You didn't say the words, because there's no courtroom stenographer in the game of life. There's nobody in the corner type of, what'd she say? Survey says? She says you didn't say that. There isn't any of that. There's no progressive replay in real world. You know what I mean? So what you have to say, you have to understand, especially with women, is they're taking the emotion from the event and they're remembering how they feel. And they think, man, if I felt like I was disrespected, you must have said some disrespectful shit to me. You must, you said this, but it really, what you meant was this, because that's how you landed it with me. And so being more careful and thoughtful when having those things, to where making sure it doesn't land as, because like sometimes as men, we could be direct, but sometimes that directness could hit a direct nerve the way we did not intend to. And you're like, and I had this conversation with my wife a few times where I'm like, babe, you really think that I meant that in the worst possible way that you heard it?
I never called you out your
name in the 16 years we've been together. Now you think I think that direction? Like when I said that comment, you took it to that level? Just give me the benefit of the doubt. If I never said anything bad like that to you before, I'm not starting today.
Right.
But
that is the challenge, though, is that directness sometimes, because it is received as offensive, right? Because it's received as offensive, we're sitting there saying, I've never said anything like that. I remember the night we were playing video games and Chastity and I got into an argument because she thought I was talking mess to Kamala on the video game. And I was like, I'm not even the type of person who has to talk mess behind people's back. What are we talking? Like, what are we talking about? If I was talking mess, I'd just talk mess to your face. Like, that's who I am. Why would you think I would need to sneak? Yeah, but it's
and it'll be like, go buy that plate box. Like
the next sentence, like it's just the game. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and it's wild to be in this space where it's like, as you're trying to correct and as you're trying to improve and as you're trying to evolve your communication, um, some of that does have to do with the things that you may have said in the past or things that may have said that were interpreted incorrectly but never voiced, or there was never a conversation about it. um, Sometimes that does create that picture of, like you said, I've never said anything like that about you. Why would I start today? And they're like, no, you did say that thing about me. I just didn't say anything. And you're like, what thing? It's no different than I told my wife. I joke about it now, but I'm like, at one point we got into an argument and it was like, I told her, I said, you kicked open the door and were like, assaulted me, not physically, but like you just kicked open the door and you were like, I was sleeping, just jarred me out of my sleep, and it was like we were going at it, and it's like, wait a minute. She's like, I didn't kick open the door. I'm like, well, that's how I felt it was, because I was asleep, and all of a sudden the door flung open and the light came on, and it was about, oh, were you talking mess to Kamala about me? And I'm like, what? What? But imagine if she didn't say anything about that. And then you have a new situation where you and I are at a barbecue, Tim, and we're chit-chatting. I'm like, yeah. She's replaying in her mind, there was that one time where he was talking mess about me, even though it wasn't. But she's replaying that in her mind because that's
on her end.
Right. Now she's 6, 7 conclusions down the road. And it's like, yo, your first leap was the wrong leap. But in all fairness, one of the things that she sent me was a thing, and it was like, in a relationship, a husband and wife take turns being teachers and students. And that's what I'm learning about communication, on how to improve my communication, is accepting that I can't always be the teacher. That's really hard when you feel like, yo, I know how I would have approached this with me. Well, yeah, you know how you would have approached it with you because you're you, but they're not. And so every opportunity that you have isn't necessarily an opportunity for you to be the teacher. Sometimes that opportunity is an opportunity for you to be the student and learn and listen. And because of that communication that she had, even though we ended up in an argument about it, when I pull back and I'm seeing, as my mind says, what's the solution? It's like, when there's tension and you're frustrated and you're talking to somebody in which they can't hear that person. Hey, what's going on? Oh, I thought that was John. It's just Julie. Hey, Julie. Hey, Virginia. But when there's tension going on and the person can't hear the person on the other end, that's not the time to be like, yes, no, yes. Because I would perceive it's like, well, why are they only asking you all of a sudden yes or no questions? It has to be because of me. It has to be because I'm in the room, so they can't say, nah, they're getting on my nerves right now. So the better question is, hey, are they getting on your nerves right now? Yes. You want to get off the game? No. It, like, that's what they're hearing, even though it's the questions were like, oh, Chastity's asleep. No, she's not. Like, it was no, she's awake. Like, those were the things that were coming out, but because of that interpretation, and especially if you don't let that go in the future, when you're seeing similar or like behavior, you're going to be like, there's that dude again, that guy. And I've had these conversations with my wife where I'm like, sometimes I feel like your perception of me is low. Like, I don't get the benefit of the doubt on that. Like, that's a low bar. I don't get the benefit of the doubt on the low bar, but I get the benefit of the doubt on the high bars. So again, for me, that's one of the things that I've had to accept when it comes to correcting and improving my own communication is being able to say, hey, Billy, is as much coaching as you do, as much teaching as you do, as much as you pour into other people, um, you need to be willing to be the student in some of these scenarios. Bruce, Art, what y'all got? How do you guys improve? Correct.
I like what you just said about the aspect of not always being the teacher. I find myself, especially with the people that I love the most, I find myself always trying to, pour into them life lessons, all that stuff. But maybe what I should be doing, I like another thing that you said about slowing down. These are things that I can actually take away and implement. When my daughter is telling me about her day, I should be interested in that, right? That's something that I should genuinely be interested in, even if only for the fact of, like, they come and tell me all kinds of crazy shit, but some of the things they go and tell their mother first is a direct result of them thinking that I don't care. And that's a me problem. Like I did that, right? So that's something that I'm going to work on. I'm going to work on giving them the time. And my wife says it all the time. The space to just tell you about my day. I'd like you to provide me the space to just tell you about my day. And even if you don't care, just fucking deal with it, right? Basically, that's what she wants. And it's not hard. You know what I'm saying? So I think that the thing that I can do to correct and improve my portion of communication is definitely letting people communicate to me on their terms and giving them the space to feel comfortable to do it. I think that's what I would like to rock with.
Love it.
Yeah, I have to agree with that on how Bruce was saying. At the end of the day, just give them their way, their version, their way. You know what I mean? Only they know what they're trying to say and express and how. And there's no owners or there's no directions manual to say, hey, this is how you express it to certain people. Because like right now I'm going to school for mechanics, right? And there's this huge gap of ages, right? And then service members and non-service members. So it's like amongst the service members, like, we talk so much crap amongst each other that like the non-service member people are like, oh, are these fools gonna fight? But it's just that's just how we roll, and then you see like the kids that are fresh out of high school, mom and dad did everything for them, they don't know anything about life, and then you got like a 40-year-old service member with a big old beard that rides a Harley, and he's like, hey fucker, go get me this. And the kid's like, oh my god, you just insulted me, and they go off, complaining that that dude was aggressive because he told him a bad word, and it's like you can't really go to the extremities, but again, it's how they receive the message, But yeah, with me in regards to proving myself, it's slow my mind down, let my mind catch up with my mouth, and let reality sink in at the same time, and wait for them, at their pace, and I guess not show too much jokingly judgment. You know what I mean? Like, because it's funny how you were saying earlier, Billy, about the yes and no's when you're on the phone. It reminds me of like back in the day when I was a kid, and my aunt would be like, "Hey, before I put a whooping in your behind, I'm gonna call your mom." You know what I mean? And there you go on the phone with mom, and she's talking all kinds of shit, like, and then your cousin's over here laughing at you because you're in trouble. So you're just like, no, no, like, okay, I'll behave. You don't want to
Right.
look like a punk, but at the same time, mom's gonna put a whooping.
Right. I'm gonna get in trouble, but I ain't gonna be looking like no punk in front of my
Yeah.
cousins.
So yeah, that's my thing on improving, is just getting to their level and understanding what their frustrations and their level of experience with these things. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I
I gotta say, you just inspired me. Both of you did actually. Something that just stuck out of me, and I'm gonna try to live this way going forward. Is
when your wife's telling you something.
and I just remember like
how interested I was.
Like I'm still interested in what she has to say, and I don't think I've lost. I think I'm pretty good at this, but I always want to get better, and I want to stay in that mindset like when we were first dating. Because when you're first dating and you got to win her, then you're like, tell me all about it.
You know what? Fuck Karen in accounting. Screw that broad.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Tell me
You know,
more.
yeah, right. Because you're, and I think sometimes is
the comfort
is the enemy of progress. You know, with that, and you get comfortable, and now you're like, yeah, okay. What are we gonna do for dinner? I don't want to hear all that. But she still needs that. And then when you're trying to get some action, you're like, damn, babe, tell me all about your day. Let me rub your feet. They can see right through it. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh, okay, I see you want to rub my feet. All right, okay. But if you're consistent, then it's just what you do. They can't, you know what I mean? They can't hold that against you. So try to be as interested with, especially with your wives, as if you're still dating them.
And with your kids, man. The way I approach
my kids is like I'm the kid and they're the parent. Or when I went through situations, how would I wanted my parents to respond? And I think like sometimes my daughters will share some things with me, and I won't give it the attention it deserved at the time. But I typically will go back and like, listen, I didn't pay attention as much as I should have did. I had things going on in my mind. Work wasn't fully shut off then, but I want to hear all about it. Tell me all about it. Why are you excited about that? What do you feel this does for you? You know, just be inquisitive. So try to be the parent that you wish you had. Try to still date your wife and be as interested in her stuff, even though you got her. You know why? Because if you don't, there's somebody out there. Then she gonna start talking about you. He don't ever listen. Oh, he don't? Man, couldn't be me. If I had a woman like you at home, I'd be listening. I'd be hanging on every word that drops off the tip of your tongue. You know what I'm saying? So being the other guy before the other guy is even a reality. You know what I mean? So that's how I think about the ways, like another ways you can improve it. Same thing. Overall, I guess what I'm basically saying is put yourself in people's shoes, but don't try to walk in them because that's where you stumble.
Right. No, I love that. Put yourself in people's shoes, but don't try to walk in them. Yeah, no, that's where I think I can improve. And you bring up a really good point is the consistency, right? Is if you correct momentarily, like let's say my wife and I have an argument and I correct momentarily, but then I revert back to what caused the argument, or I revert my communication style back to what's caused the argument. You basically are still in a cycle of poor communication. My wife and I actually, my wife says that because I use her and I as examples, I make it seem like we have a horrible relationship. We actually have a good relationship. It's just that we're growing and we're evolving and we're stretching each other and we're building and supporting each other. So there's a lot.
I got to interrupt you. Tell her that's when you know it's a good relationship, because you see these people online talking about relationship goals, and then they at the red table talking about they were in entanglement. So I don't want to hear that stuff. Like what everybody presents and projects as their perfect relationship, quite often
is the opposite. So the fact that you're willing to discuss these things in a form shows you how actually positive a relationship. Tell her I said that.
And when you're done, and when you're done telling her what Tim said, let her know that as a person who's been in a relationship for 21 years with the same person, I never get the vibe that you guys have a bad relationship. It sounds like normal shit, right? The best part about it, and the reason why you know it's not a bad relationship, because you're always talking about working and growing and fixing and evolving, right? So that's the sign right there that it's a good relationship. And it's good that you share, because you'd be surprised how many people think they're the only one going through it. They're the only ones experiencing it. When in reality, anybody in a long-term committed relationship can definitely relate to some of the things that you guys go through and grow through, right? But that's what you're supposed to be doing. We're growing together, right?
Right. Exactly.
And you're not looking for validation on why you're right. You're always openly admitting where your flaws are in it. So there's
plenty of differences. You know, it's not like she's wrong, ain't she, fellas? It's the men's circle. Let's surround this lady. You know what I mean? It's you're like,
surround the wagons.
yeah, let's circle the wagons. It isn't like that. It's like, you know what?
you know, I got to get better at this, and I know this. So there's always a lot of accountability. You know.
Yeah, and
I didn't mean to Kanye West you. Go ahead, keep going.
Nah. But what I'm learning is like, even in our conflicts, when we're coming back and how we break out of these loops, there's some loops that we still have to work through, but the loops that we're able to break out of are the ones where it's like, okay, in this communication, I need to take a break. And so we were having a conversation that was not going the way that I had hoped that it would go. And instead of trying to get my message out and, oh, I'm gonna cut you off because you're not listening to me and now I'm not listening to you, I just sat back and I listened. And it was a fight for me to not disengage because I wanted to just be like, I'm gonna just tune it out and la la la, connect the dots. Like I was gonna just tune out, but I was like, no, I'm gonna hear what she has to say. And when she finishes, instead of responding, I'm going to take a break. I'm gonna go downstairs, get some water, I'm gonna get some food, I'm gonna eat. Like I took like a 20-minute break in the middle of a conversation. I took a 20-minute break and came back and said, okay, so we can continue now. And I was able to stay calm in how I was communicating. Like some of the things that I said, maybe she didn't like, but at least I was calm and not in this irate, I'm going to get my message out, hear me roar voice. It was just like, babe, this is the issue that I'm having with this conversation. And one of the things in our counseling, they talk about, gentle communication, not gentle parenting. I don't know that yet. I don't know if I'm gonna ever get there. Gentle communication is like, you can have a message that you want to share. You just don't have to share it so abrasively. And I think sometimes, especially as men, because we're very competitive, I think women are more competitive with other women in like, oh well, I'm the prettiest. Like they'll say, you can look at a woman and see who the prettiest one is, and she ain't gonna have no other friends that are prettier than her, right? They're more competitive in that regard. But as men, it's like we want to be right. We want to be right. We don't want to be wrong, and we will defend wrong in order to maintain our rightness. Like that's just how we are wired, unfortunately. And it takes a lot to rewire that system, especially in a long-term happy relationship. Don't take nothing to rewire it in a long-term miserable relationship. You don't got to do any rewiring in that. But in a long-term relationship, if you want to be happy, there's a lot of rewiring that takes place, from the examples that we're given as men of what relationships look like, to not even just the example, to the societal standards of what it is to be a man. All these things come into play, and it's like, you know what? I want to dismantle some of that stuff. I just got done having a meeting with someone, and found out that their mother had passed away. Now, this is like a professional meeting. It's not like a person that I know or anything like that. This is a professional meeting. And I said, oh, I realized that I got your message saying that your mother had a heart attack. How is she doing? And you could see it impacted them. They were like, she didn't make it. She passed away. And they took a breath and they were trying to contain their emotions, right? Now, in this meeting, there's two women and a guy. Two women and a guy. And I'm the guy. And normally when it comes to nurture, nature, loving, affection, compassion, and things like that, those are typically characteristics reserved for women. But in this situation, I'm like, yo, all I could think about is if my mom one day had a heart attack and 3 days later passed away, and now I'm back in this professional environment trying to do what I need to do, that I'm compromised. Well, I forget what movie was that. Oh, it was the Star Wars movie when they were talking about Spock and his mother died before his eyes, and they were like, he was like, "You want me to make a Vulcan feel emotions, a species who has been working out emotions out of their system for generations. You want me to get them to feel?" And he was like, "My mother just died before my eyes. I can guarantee you that I'm emotionally compromised." And so the person is trying to hold back emotions. And I said, "Hey, do you mind if I give you a hug?" I don't know this person, but I'm like, "Do you mind if I give you a hug?" And they were like, "Yeah." And I gave them a hug and they immediately broke down crying in my arms. Immediately. And so when I think about like, how are you going to be able to be in a long-term happy relationship where you can trust and you support each other and you edify and uplift each other if you can't allow space for things like that to happen? And how come you can allow for that to happen right in a space with a stranger, but you might struggle with that with your wife or with your spouse or your partner? You might struggle with that because it's like, yeah, but you did all these other things to hurt me. Or when my mom died, nobody was there for me, right? That whole toxic generational trauma stuff. Well, I didn't have it, so you ain't gonna have it. I didn't have any support. Nobody cared that I was struggling, so I don't care that you're struggling. No, you're my partner. I need to be open and I need to create. I should want to create, not even I need to. I should want to create spaces where you can be vulnerable at. And when I started this particular poor communication thing 3 weeks ago, yeah, I didn't create the space for that. And so I have to improve that so that way when, I'm not going to say if, when my wife gives me another opportunity to provide that space for her, that I'm just as intuitive as I was with the stranger with her. That's what I got.
That's funny because you
Said that and it made me think of a lot of things. Like, not to go so general, say men and women, let's just say those that typically don't show emotion, which is typically a man, but there's women that identify as that too. And then those that share a lot of emotion, which there's mostly women, but it could also be men
there too. It's certain people
have been
they've had their emotions
catered to since they were born. So they spend their lifetime regulating their emotions down. And then there's certain segment who's told, "Stop crying, that ain't gonna fix shit anyway." And so you never have emotion and you spend your lifetime regulating your emotion up. It's almost like that Benjamin Button movie. And then eventually maybe you both get to the same point. If you're in a relationship or just in general. But it made me think about that. What you just said made me think about that. And then I thought about what you said about how do you share that with a stranger and not with the person closest to you sometimes. And I think it is because
we have the person.
one of the reasons could be is we hold the person who's closest to us, we hold their opinion of us
It's so high regard
that we protect that and we don't want to do anything that compromises how they may see us. So it's easier to break down in front of somebody who it's nice of them to be there for us, but at the end of the day, I don't really give a fuck about what this person, what their opinion of me is. They're in the right place at the right time. I think a lot of it is that too, is pride and guarding it. Men don't want to seem weak. We don't want our wives to watch us cry. We try to veer away from that. So I think that you hit a lot of things with that, Ro.
Yeah. Bruce, welcome back, brother.
Sorry about that. Internet issues.
bigger box,
Man.
I'm not lagging no more.
Fair enough. I got one more question I want to get to before we wrap up. And really, it comes to kind of where you're at, Tim. You keep giving us great segues. Uh, why does our communication with those we're closest to seem to suffer the most when it comes to poor communication? Go ahead, Bruce. What you got?
Time. Time. I know, and
Elaborating.
I say it to my wife all the time. I said, no one in my circle says the things that you say about me to me or think the way that you think about me, right? But time has allowed my wife to feel how she feels, right? And 21 years is a long time. And who I am today, I wasn't when she met me, right? There's been a lot of transition. That time that we've put in has put up unknowingly, unbeknownst, I don't know, but barriers have been put up. And I say it to my wife all the time. One of my biggest pet peeves with my wife is how she communicates with everyone else other than me and my children. She talks to us crazy. This is how I tell her. You talk to us crazy, right? We want customer service, Liz. Right? I mean, talk to me like you talk to them on the phone. You know what I'm talking about? And her response is always the same. I hold you guys higher. I hold you guys at a much higher level. I expect more of you guys. So you expect more of us, but you talk crazy to us, right? It's time. It's time. You are comfortable now, right? 20 years, we're comfortable, right? So, and it sucks. It sucks. It's the same way with like the janitor who or the yard duty who somebody who works at the school. Your kid's like, well, why do you talk to Johnny and them all nice and shit, but you come home and you cuss us out, right? I have time invested with you. I have, as my wife would say, I have expectations of you. Time and expectations really, really hinder communication if it's not a focal point, if it's not something that you guys are both trying to work on, right? And I know that about myself. It's the same, in my opinion, I think it's the same state of mind that one would say, oh, well, she's going to love me anyway. Oh, well, he's going to love me anyway, right? I'm going to let myself go. I'm going to go do this, that, and the third. I am not going to be my best self, the best version of me, because he's going to love me anyway. She's going to love me anyway. Time. What did you say? Is it the thief of joy?
Thief of peace.
The thief of peace. Time has a way, if you are not invested in growing together and understanding your partner, spouse, kid, whoever, time has a way of actually doing some crazy shit in a negative type way. So in my opinion, I think that, and like you said, Tim, think about it, like you said, go back to when you first met her. Communication was so much different. Ain't that much time invested. You trying to get to that investment of time. So in the beginning, you want to make sure she wants to spend all her time with you. But as that time grows, if you guys aren't, in my opinion, and it's something that I have to work on in my household, honestly, intentionally too. It has to be an intentional effort being put forth to combat the time decay. Even it's almost like time decay. It's crazy. It's crazy.
It's plutonium.
Right.
Yellow cake. Yeah.
Yeah, buddy. Yeah, buddy. Art, what about you? Why does it seem like our communication with those closest to us suffer the most?
Well, I'm gonna say I'm one of those that on occasion I default to like, she'll be there later. She'll be there tomorrow. She'll be there in the morning. And me, where I get lost is keeping myself busy, working on something outside, X something that she's like, hey, we need this done, or this needs to be taken care of. Because me, I can't just sit idle, man. My mind goes crazy, and an hour turns to a day, and it's like I'm losing my mind, right? And to me, it's like I've tried focusing some of that attention to her and stuff like that, but it's just my mind that gets so wrapped up with something ridiculous that I don't dedicate that time, and she gets annoyed or I get annoyed at it, and it just becomes a negative thing. To where if I can, in a sense, control myself to where like, okay, look, we're gonna spend this time together, and phones off, no emergencies, the blessings of God, and let's move forward with our time, um, and it just goes back to that of what Bruce is saying, the time. It can, if you don't control it or monitor it, that time can work against you, because once you realize, oh snap, I haven't had enough time with my wife. I don't even know where she's at or what's going on. And then you got the other homeboy over there already working that game. You know what I mean? Already getting them flowers and yeah, there you go. You know what I mean? And then you're over here sitting like, huh, why is the house so quiet?
Right.
They moved out like 2 months ago.
Playing goldfish. You got any fours, girl? No, you ain't got no fours. Don't worry. I'm going to find out what cards you got. Yeah. Tim, what you got?
Kind of piggybacking off a lot of what y'all have said already. To me,
Bruce,
when you say you want the customer, what you're describing, what your wife kind of feels like me sometimes, where, it's the unrealistic expectations on unreliable people. She's, in this case, you're kind of unreliable in that sense, to where she's and anybody might be unreliable. Her expectations may be just too high for you. You know what I mean? Which it might be an unrealistic expectation, and she doesn't know it, because in her mind, she's like, I just expect better of you, and it's like,
maybe just expect me.
you know, expect what I've been giving you for 20 years, 21 years. I've had to calibrate myself to that.
But I would say the
Taking for granted thing is huge. Those that suffer closest is because we take those people for granted. I'm gonna give you an example. We're using the wife getting a new boo thing. Let's pretend all of us right now, and you can look at it and you can see across the board, men and women both do the same thing.
let's say your wife
Wanted to talk to you and say, hey,
I don't feel like you've
been attentive to me. I don't feel like you're as invested as me as you once were. I think we need some time apart. You would tighten your shit up fucking quick. You would be there with flowers. You'd be like, let me go ahead. You'd be like 50 Cent. Dun, 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 dun. You'd be running on that treadmill, getting back in shape, and you'd be going back to win your love back. You know what I'm saying? Women do that same thing. You've heard them say it. Oh, I got to get my snapback body, my get right body, my get 'em girl body. And it's like, why didn't you just get your get 'em girl body for who you had? You know what I mean? It's because we both take each other for granted. And the time thing is very interesting, because nobody really knows what time they got anyway. All those people
Right.
that get that conversation from their significant other, they didn't see that shit coming. They thought they were, we got 20 more years until retirement, and next thing you know, it's
Gone.
visitation on the weekends. You're riding a 10 speed to work because you got to save gas money because you're paying all this extra stuff now. Me and Ro may or may not know somebody that's kind of going through that right now. And what would you know? Lost 35 pounds in a short period of time, getting stuff together, because you start, when that person makes a decision like that, or you make a decision to do that, you have no choice but to look at the man or the woman in the mirror, and you got to start making changes at that point, or you go the other way and you start going into like a depression. But it's, to me, the reason why those that suffer closest to us is because we take it for granted. We expect them to take the brunt of it and deal with it. And I heard this one thing, I now I can't unhear it, which is why men kind of outburst and have a little bit of rage in them sometimes. And someone said maybe that's just a man's way of crying, because women sometimes cry all the time because they find a certain emotion, and we've been conditioned not to cry. Maybe our rage is our cry. Maybe that's our version of that. And I heard that and I was like, damn.
Maybe that's something. So,
Yeah. I was talking to somebody the other day and they just started crying. I was like, what are you crying about? Like, why are you crying? They're like, oh, just a lot. Okay. Okay. And it's interesting because I think before I started doing the men's circle, I was buttoned pretty tight. Like the only time you were going to see me cry is if it was like my kids, something deep with my kids, or I was getting ready to beat you up. Those are the only two times you're going to see me cry. Like if I'm crying, please, and we're in a or we're in a potential physical altercation, just leave, because the blur is going to go away real quick, and the hands are going to come flying, and it's just not worth it. So, but that rage is, Tim, you and I are both the youngest. Being the youngest, where you feel like your voice isn't heard, and normally when you were a kid, you stump off and go and pout in your room and cry, I hate it here, whatever, right? But now it's like, nah, I got some presence that I can project if need be. And so I'm not going to go stuffing off to the room now. Now you're going to hear me. I'm going to make you hear me because I don't want to feel like that little boy who
get it out,
I'm
like you said earlier.
I'm gonna get it out. I'm gonna get my message out. Exactly.
Yeah. And unfortunately, that comes at a cost to us. It doesn't help. It doesn't help us any more than going to our room and pouting about it helps us. But in the moment, it makes us feel good because we at least got our message out.
See, hold on. I don't know because I rage, do it, but it don't feel good no more. It does not feel good anymore.
You're correct on that.
It doesn't feel good anymore, and this is the thing. You really don't know the damage you're doing to other people. You have an idea for sure. But what I do know for a what I do know for a fact is when I rage and I lose control of Bruce, I hate myself afterwards, right? Like, I don't know what impact it had on you, but it's detrimental to me, right? Can't do it no more. And that's why I told my wife, we were about to go down that path where the conversation was getting, and I told her, hey, you know what? I'm going to leave. I grabbed the keys to my truck, drove off. I will be back because I don't want to be him no more. Like you said, now I'm just screaming to get my message out. I was already talking to get my message across. What do you say? Unreal expectations for unreliable people. I'm expecting you to understand what I'm saying because I've already said it the way it needs to be said. You are intentionally not understanding me. So now we're at this this junction of our conversation, and this is where it ends. This is where my stop loss engages, and I'm out of here, right? Because it's not about me hurting you anymore. And I think that's what I'm learning on this mission to love Bruce, on this journey to love Bruce more. I'm learning that in my attempt to hurt you or show you that I'm right or to prove that all that shit does is hurt me. All it does is hurt me because it takes me away from who I want to be. And I hate that, right? But what I stopped doing is stop blaming other people. That's a me thing, bro. You ain't got no control over yourself. That's a you thing, Bruce. So recognize when it's coming and cut that shit off. Sorry to cut you off.
I'll give you a question I used to ask all the time, and because I struggle with that too, Bruce, man. I would ask if I was, because a lot of my rage would be like Billy said, from not being heard. And you start getting frustrated, like, I'm pretty much outlining exactly what the hell I have to say. Why are we trying to make this more than what I just said? Why are you trying to say, well, I feel like what you meant by that? Why are you telling me how I meant what I meant? I'm articulate enough to where I could say it.
Or why are you telling me? Don't tell me how I feel. My wife does that to me.
The question I always give is, like, when someone starts saying that,
I haven't had to ask her this in a long time, but I would ask her things like,
what is going on with you that's preventing you from hearing me right now? Is there something, do we need to come back to this? Like
Billy said, is there something that we need to address that's a roadblock into you hearing me right now? Because I'm telling you what it is. For some reason, you're not either listening or willing to pick it up. What is it that we need to what bridge do we need to cross to get to where you could hear me out? And sometimes that's uncovered things where it's like, damn, you're still harping on that? I thought we were good like 3 days ago. And it's like, what I've learned is women are emotional. The emotion is still raw in them, even though in our mind, our solution is okay, we're good. We're already moved past it. Now, sometimes the emotion is still a little raw, so it still bothers them a little bit. So that question helped me a lot, Bruce, is, what's preventing you,
from hearing what I have to say at this point? What do we need to address?
because if not, you're just yelling at each other aimlessly.
You're right. And so also for me, what I'm realizing, especially this year has been fucking incredible. It's been incredible. But what I've learned this year about my wife or about myself, it might be both. But what I've learned is when my wife is content on when her responses are feeling based, that's when I know I have to remove myself from the conversation until we're gonna have to circle back. Because what happens is my wife gets hell bent on the feeling of it, regardless of what I'm saying. And I know that I communicate well, like I know that but sometimes I guess the things that I'm saying make her feel some kind of way. And then we have to deal in that reality of feelings, regardless if they're real or not. But when they're not real, it drives me. It sends me, right? So that's when I know that's when I know I have to remove myself and circle back to the conversation. And they are emotion based. They're emotion based creatures. And so even sometimes when I circle back, there's still residual feelings that we're discussing as opposed to really like diving into what the actual problem is. And so for me, knowing that about my wife should make me better at handling it, right? And so what I have to do is I have to get better of recognizing it's so fucking rough, man. I mean, anybody in a relationship with a person 10, 20 years, it's rough, man. It's rough. But the thing is, and what I love about what I hear you gentlemen speaking of, what I try to tell my wife, wanting the change is really the catalyst, right? The foundation of making this shit work is recognizing it and actually wanting to change, right? So these men's circles be so valuable because y'all be giving me these nuggets and these gems, tangible shit that I can walk away with and try today. Like, so I appreciate you guys, man.
Art, you had something?
Yeah, I just wanted to throw in on what Bruce was saying. It's kind of like a logic versus feelings battle at that point. And it's like, doesn't matter what you try to do or how you say it, you want to pull yourself back in the sense where it doesn't hurt their feelings. Because at that point, you're kind of in a doesn't matter what you do, it's just which one's the less of which decision is less of the hurt, you know what I mean? Yeah.
And you know, honestly, those two things will never be able to overcome one another. Logic will never be able to overcome emotion, and emotion will never be able to overcome logic. It's the yin and the yang. You'll be in a constant state of war and chaos in the middle of the yin and the yang because of that. Neither side is willing to yield. Logic is going to say, we're not talking about emotions right now. I'm not going to yield to that. And emotion is going to say, I'm not talking about how logical it is. I'm talking about how I feel about it. I'm not going to yield to the logic. And on both sides, both sides are going to be equally frustrated.
Well, it's crazy how
go ahead, Bruce.
It's crazy how they balance each other too, though, right? Like and I hear my wife, I'll just openly tell her, thank you for your perspective because it changed me. But my wife, she's not that quick to concede that little. To her, it's a loss. If logic wins, am I lying? Am I lying though? Right? You know what I'm saying? And so I'll be like, thank you, babe, for bringing me that perspective because I didn't look at it like that, and I understand now. And it has a lot to do with her feelings and her emotions have guided the way I raised my children. I didn't have a mom, so I don't understand women at all. So my wife has been instrumental in making sure that I have the connection that I have with my daughters and understanding them and all that shit. My wife ain't gonna never tell you, oh man, my husband has been instrumental in making me see that logic does work and it ain't never gonna happen, right? But the truth of the matter and the reason why we work and we are continuing to try to work this shit out, because forever is a long time, is because logic and emotions balance each other like light and dark, yin and yang, like you said. We need men, women, a logic, emotion. We need it. Like we need each other. And it sucks that it feels like a constant battle. I think what I'm trying to work on with my wife is, yeah, it could be a battle, but we're not fighting against each other, right? Like this isn't, it's Bruce and Liz against the problem, right? Not Bruce and Liz against Bruce and Liz, then against the problem, right? I'm trying to fucking get that
and made the
equation.
best man win, and we use that as the solution for
And
the
we don't
problem.
always have to go into whose fault it is that the problem existed in the first place.
Right.
But yeah, it's funny because we're logic based, so we, in a weird way, we condition our women to act that way. Because what do? Because we're men, and what is the thing we crave most? Is we crave our peace. We're gonna do what's necessary to get the peace, and we're like, look, babe, I'm sorry that you took it that way, and move on. And in their head, they never had to say they're sorry.
So
Okay, what you just said, that's a whole nother.
Look, he froze. He's
Disney done messed it up for everybody.
He ain't even got a bandwidth to get that emotion out.
Listen, Disney done got these ladies thinking that they can just be princesses, right? Ain't nobody teaching them how to be princesses, though. You know what I mean? Prince comes in, saves the day, and what did you do? I'm just here and I'm pretty. It's gross.
it's funny
It's just funny how that works, man. But at the end of the day, our logical mind says, "What's the logical path to peace?" Okay, I'm sorry that you took it that way. I didn't mean you to take it that way. You think I would mean it that way? And then it reminds me of, I've seen I'm a fan of comedy, so I always end up finding like these little nuggets. And like Bill Burr, he had this one where he was like, "I cracked the code on women." He was like, "When a woman is right, they stay on the point. When a woman starts seeing that they're wrong, they go rogue and they start arguing the emotions about the point, and then they try to bait you until you lose in control. So now you gotta apologize for something." And I heard that shit, and he was like, he said he had an argument with his wife, and she was like, "You're a dummy for even thinking that." He said, "Okay, I had to slip the jab, stay in the pocket, keep calm." It's like, you know what? I'm sorry that you think that I'm a dummy for that. But this is what's going on, and this is what this is. And he's like, and I knew I had her. I knew I had her at that point. So it makes me think of that all the time. Like, almost you're right more than you think if you start hearing about something other than the point that's being argued. Because I replay previous arguments, I'm like, that's exactly the goddamn game plan.
And Tim, you're so right. And
yeah.
I noticed that when I remain calm, kids, wife, it fucks them up. They're like, "Oh,
this isn't in the script."
He didn't.
He's going off script.
He didn't. Let me throw something else in there. Hold on, we're gonna try to get him off. Let me sprinkle some more bullshit in there. And if I just remain calm, it's wild. It's wild. Very helpful. Very helpful.
Really quick before we head to close, dang, that 2 hours flew by. Looks like Key joined us. Appreciate you joining us, Key. Said communication suffers with those closest to us because of familiarity. I talk about familiarity in my book. There is an assumption that those closest to you know what you mean or understand you without having to tell them. And there's also, I think, another assumption to that of they are going to forgive you. When you, I think it was Bill Burr too, that said, imagine living in a society where it is not only unacceptable, other people will fight other people if they do this to you. So this is the world that women live in. They could go up to somebody and slap a protein shake out of their hand and not expect to get hit. We as men, if I go up to some muscle-bound dude and say, "Man, you want that?" slap, I gotta expect combat. Period. I don't get to expect that he's not going to hit me. And so it's the expectation of forgiveness. It's the expectation that I am a female and I can anticipate that you won't go as far as to put your hands on me, right? And I mean, I've seen some females throwing punches at dudes and they're like, "Whoa, wait, whoa." And I'm like, if this was another guy, they'd be squared up already.
You see the lady that got hit with the brick?
She was slapping people though.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk about her because she makes me bad. She makes me
unrealistic
upset.
expectations.
Right. and nobody defended me whatsoever. You were slapping people and nobody came to your defense. Who knew?
Hold on, hold on. This must be on social media because I ain't seen that. That's hilarious.
Yourself up.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. It's wild to me, but that familiarity, that comfort, and that belief that Bruce, you're a good example of this. I've been with you for 20 years. You ain't going nowhere. You'll forgive me. We'll get back into each other's good grace.
You're gonna love me anyway. You're gonna love me anyway.
But what people don't understand, especially I think now, is that people are learning that, hey, I don't have to not love you or to leave you, right? I don't have to get to the point where I don't love you to leave you.
I can love you from a distance.
Ooh, my choir director used to tell me, hey, Blessing, I can love you from across the street. I don't have to love you on the same side of the sidewalk. I can love you from across the street. So that's where we'll close it out tonight, because we got literally like 14 minutes before we close, and I got a couple of key takeaways I need to share. So final thoughts, anybody can jump in. Final thoughts for the night when it comes to poor communication and the last men's circle for the year.
I'll go. Not excited about the last men's circle for the year. Like Art said, what am I going to do with myself? But I understand. Can't wait till we fire this thing back up. My takeaway from this conversation is I am very, very thankful for the gems that you guys have dropped. I think the most noticeable thing that I will take from this conversation is the things that I can actively do to improve the communication with the people that I care about the most, including myself too. Also, listening to you guys talk has also made me realize how important it is that I not only improve the communication with my wife and my children and my loved ones, but also improve the communication with myself. I talk to myself more than anyone else talks to me, right? We are in our head, we're in our thoughts. So that's the most communication that I have. So that probably should be the first place I start. And I figure if I can implement these tools to communicate better with myself, that it's only going to strengthen the foundation of my communication with everyone else. I think starting within would probably be the best step, in my opinion, because you can't control how anyone else is going to communicate with you, or how they're going to go about improving their communication with you. So I'm going to start with me. I'm going to work on me, and then I'm going to be intentional about giving my girls space to just communicate with me, regardless of if I'm interested or not, if I care or not. And I think that will go a long way with helping repair the foundation of communication in my home. And that's what I got.
Love it. Art or Tim?
I'll go on this. Kind of piggyback on what Bruce says, wise man. Yeah, just it's amazing. Different cultures, different fundamentals that we have, different ways to see things, but we all come out to the same conclusion. I think it's safe to say we all come out to the same conclusion, where it starts off with us first. You know, we have to work on our fundamentals, our likes and dislikes, and start filtering out what is the best for us. And the us part is our family. You know what I mean? Is our girls, our wife, our kids. You know, it's even the damn dog. You know what I mean? It's just it's us. And in order for us to unfortunately, or not unfortunately, but even though society has it to where the toxic masculinity or no head of household BS at the end of the day is, we as men have to initiate and take that first step in order for the family to follow. You know what I mean? Because no one's going to be brave. No one is brave until that first person takes a step, then everyone else is brave, you know? And it's a default in within us that, you know, I don't want to be the first one to land on my face if it doesn't go right, you know? But if no one's moving, then we're all stuck and we all fall apart. But yeah, it's my thing too, and I'm glad for this moment that I need to begin working on myself and and giving my wife her time, because at the end of the day, the kids, I give them as much time as I can, but they're going to be little birds. They're going to fly the coop one day, and it's just going to be me and my wife.
Right. That part. Tim, what you got?
Since it's the last one of
The
the year,
year, and we're not gonna. I was envisioning a men's circle where the logo had the turkey in the middle of it and everything, but we ain't gonna have that. So I'll just tell you what I'm thankful. I'll say what I'm thankful for, and I'll take that time. I'm really thankful for this platform that you created, Ro, and being able to speak and converse with people that
it's all about accountability. It's
nobody's seeking validation here. It's all about getting each other better. And the things that I've been able to speak into power from being on this being on here has been really, really helpful for me. I see a change, an ongoing, kind of almost like an accelerated change, because now I just don't feel like I'm alone. I don't feel like, man, sometimes, my nephew said this, and I told him, like, you need to come watch the men's circle, man. So I'm going to have to hit him up when the new year starts, because he said this, and it made me feel like how I felt before, where sometimes it feels as a man, when you're a man like us, like how we are, like you're on the Truman Show. Like, this isn't, what is this? Am I the only, is the joke on me? Like, this is not real, right? Like, Ashton Kutcher about to pop out and say, nah, we was just messing with you. We get what's going on. Sometimes it feels like you're the only one that sees reality. So this has been a great support for that. To be like, nah, you're not the only one that's, you're not crazy. You're seeing things. That's been a really, really, really helpful thing for me, and I'll be forever thankful for it. So I'll say that. And then you dropped a gem specifically to the show. I'll close with this. You said something about poor communication I never even entertained in your first breakdown, Ro. Is you said the internal monologue. If you want to talk about putting unrealistic expectations on unreliable people, I feel like I've done that to myself quite a bit, where I come up sometimes with some plans and ideas that are so elaborate, but if there's a tripping stage in the beginning, then the whole house of cards comes down. Now I'm frustrated, and it's like, well, you're frustrated. What if you recalibrated that? What if you only set it up to a certain point, and then you took from what you learned from that and then built going forward? You never feel the frustration. You would just feel growth. So that's really hit home with me in this episode tonight. So thank you for that, Ro. Back to you.
Tim, I'm sorry, guys. I did it again. Tim, what you just said, I'm going to take and use, but I'm going to say it out loud. And in those moments when I'm having my internal monologue and I'm frustrated, I'm going to be mindful about how I communicate to myself in that moment, right? Because the teardown be real. And not only did the teardown be real, it'd be such a waste of time, right? If I can fix it, calibrate it right then, and move past it, the time you get back that you didn't waste. Thank you, Tim. You just be dropping gems, huh? That's what you do. That's just what you do. All right.
I try. I try to be like Sonic when you get hit. You know what I mean? But those are rings. But yeah, it's just, man. You go through life, man, and kind of. I've been blessed and cursed with the life experience, and I went through a journey about 10 years ago where I just didn't want to be that guy no more. Like, my dad's a great man, but I ain't gonna lie to you. Ro could attest this. When Pop showed up at the house, it was time to head to the back of the house.
Yep.
And sometimes I'd come home, I'd be a little bit chippy, and I told my wife this, and my wife was like, "Do you want to be the dad that the kids have to go away from, or do you want to be the dad that they come to?" So it's funny because I'll come home and I'll be at my desk working, and he'll just come in and come tell me about the day, and it's like the opposite, and it makes me feel good. But if she's the teacher sometimes too. That's the thing, and she showed me quite a bit and helped me kind of put thoughts in my head where it's like, okay, like I only need the thought. I'll do the rest, and I'll kind of inception this shit on my own. You know what I mean?
Right.
So she'll put like a little thought, and then that'll be it. She'll go back to reading her book, and I'm like, damn. All right, and then I'll be on my way. So thank y'all, man. Thank y'all. Thank y'all for being open to share the things. Art, man. It's been really cool getting to know you over these, man, and through the men's circle. Bruce, man, it's your willingness to share, man. That's like the new strength. That's like the new strength. You can bodybuild all you want. You ain't on Bruce's level because Bruce is stronger than you. Bruce will tell you what his flaw. Here's my flaws and all, and that's a true strength. That too many people care too much about what other people think. They won't do what you do. So you're an inspiration in that regard. And of course, man, Ro, you man. There's a reason why you're my brother from another mother, man.
True story.
It's just we need a whole other men's circle to say what you meant to my life. But thank you, man. Thank you for including me in this.
Yeah, no. Thank you for being a part of it. Can't include somebody who doesn't choose to be a part. But no, just as far as for me, the last men, I'm going to end on the last men's circle. I'm going to go with the key takeaways first. There were about 8 key takeaways from tonight. The very first key takeaway was poor communication is the thief of peace. And Tim, you said that right off the bat. And all I can immediately think about is how in every men's circle, the topic of peace has always come up, like the value in the value that we place on peace as men. And so we're kind of like peace crack addicts. We'll do anything to get peace. Man, I just need some peace. I just need some peace. I just need some peace.
Too hot for that piece right there.
So because of that, if we can identify that poor communication is a thief of peace, that is an incentive for us as men to try to improve and get our communication right. So that was key takeaway number 1. Key takeaway number 2 is decide if you want to get your message out or across. Again, that out is just, I just want to not even be heard. I just want to get the words out of my mouth. The across is I want not only to get my message out verbally, but I want the reception of that message to be received in a manner in which there can be dialogue to make sure that the interpretation is correct. So that's key takeaway number 2. Key takeaway number 3 is communication is not always the teaching moment that we want it to be. Trust me, there's gonna be multiple times where you probably could have told the person, hey, there's a wall there and you're running full speed, you're going to run into it. There's going to be multiple times like that. But just because that there's multiple times like that doesn't mean that that the communication in that moment is the teaching moment that we need to seize. Be willing to let some of those go. And Tim, I like what you said during the conversation about kind of that equity that you have. You don't want to spend all your equity up teaching every single time, because then, like you said, well, is this another lecture like how important it is to clean the kitchen, and now we're talking about don't do drugs, so really none of those things are really important, right? So communication is not always the teaching moment that we want it to be. Other key takeaway that came right after that is you can't always be the teacher in communication. You can't always be the teacher. Be willing to be the student. And sometimes, even if you're the teacher in the moment, be willing to go back and look at the lesson that you were teaching and see if there's something that you can learn from it. Key takeaway number 5 is improving poor communication takes consistency. If you're not consistent in improving your poor communication, then you're really in a poor communication loop where communication improves, gets better, and then you revert back to your old habits of poor communication, and then you come right back into the poor communication loop, and it's like going round and round in circles. It's just not worth it. So improving poor communication takes consistency, and don't confuse consistency with perfection. There's going to be times where you're going to be improving and you'll slip back a little bit, but Bruce, I love the term, the financial term, stop loss. Have that stop loss so you can say, oh shoot, I slipped back to here. Stop loss to engage, taking a break. Stop loss engaged, getting in my truck and taking a drive. Now, when I come back, I can start a little bit more ahead of the game and start continue on that path. I'll even add this: have a trailing stop loss. Don't just have the one same stop loss that you always slide it back to the beginning. A trailing stop loss, if you don't know the financial term of a trailing stop loss, is as you grow, your stop loss moves up so that you're not falling back. And as you grow a little more, your stop loss moves up versus your stop loss being back at level 2 and you on level 10 and you got to go all the way back to level 2. So
Solid.
I love that.
Solid.
Little financial literacy there for y'all.
Hey, that consistency, real quick, it's funny. Like, it made me think of like when someone is extra nice to
You
you.
out of all the blue, and you're like, "What do you want?" Because that's what it does, right? So that made me think of it. But go ahead, Ro.
True story. Key takeaway number 6: poor communication is a byproduct of taking people for granted. Taking, I would actually change, if I was to retype this, I would change it from people to relationships. Taking relationships for granted is always going to produce a byproduct of poor communication, because you can say anything. You don't have to be, you can be direct, rude, insulting. You can be all these things because you're taking for granted that they're still going to be there to take that. And going back to what you said earlier, Tim, if you could think about how you were when you first met your partner, right? When you were trying to get action.
Can
Right. You Hulkamania.
Oh, Gamania, run wild on you.
But if you could take that and say, as important as this person was when I was trying to pursue and acquire her, she is just as equally important today, and I want to maintain that pursuit. You begin to not take things for granted. And even when you do mess up and you have moments of poor communication, you're willing to apologize and try to rectify and improve or evolve your communication skills. So poor communication is a byproduct of taking relationships for granted. If you're appreciative and you have gratitude for your relationships, it's going to help you improve your communication. Key takeaway number 7 is poor communication hurts you more than others. It also has a compounded impact. Fool me once, right? Shame on me. Fool me twice. Shame. Yeah. I'm sorry. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. That compounding, and I think we didn't talk about it tonight, but when it comes to poor communication, there is a compounding effect that takes place. And this is why you get to that one argument where you're like, dang, you left because I said I didn't like those shoes. Like, it's the compounded impact that is taking place, where they say the straw that broke the camel's back. Yeah, there was a million straws on this camel's back and he was carrying it, but you put that million in one and that broke the camel's back. So be aware that poor communication hurts you more than it hurts others, and there's also a compounded impact. Which got
accumulated trauma, time, and poor communication. That compounded impact is crazy. That's a good takeaway, bro.
Yeah. And then lastly, poor communication will only change if you want to change it. It's an intentional thing. Communication is extremely difficult, especially with the people you're closest to. It's extremely difficult. And if you are in a space right now where you're in a cycle of poor communication, if you want to improve that, it's going to take an intentional effort to improve it. And you're going to have an intentional willingness to want to improve it. Other than that, you'll just be like, this has always been the way I have always been. And so I'm going to keep being me. And you have to just accept me for who I am. Well, I mean, Billy, who he was in first, second, and third grade, I can't expect somebody who's been rocking with me for 30 years to still accept me as Billy, the third grader. So if that doesn't make sense, how does accepting you and not even your flaws, accepting we're just going to stick with poor communication, accepting your choice to actively pursue poor communication. Yeah, that's never going to be a choice that I'm going to make. I'll say, hey, you know what? You're right. Let me communicate this. The friendship is over. Like, I'll communicate very effectively and efficiently that we're done here, because you have no desire to grow. And I don't want to be the one forcing you to do that. That's something that has to come instinctively and inherently from within. I can't force you onto that path. So those are the key takeaways that I have for tonight. The men's circle, man, I don't even remember when we started this. This is wild. Like I normally remember, I think we started maybe in February or March, but I don't remember. But these conversations have been transformative in my life, having conversations with each and every one of you, even the men that aren't here tonight, even leading up to the men's circle legacy conference. This has been such a transformative year, and it's always great to look back at my word. I have a guiding light word that I pick for every year. This year's word was fluency, and I use fluency not in the aspect of language, but in the aspect of mastery, mastering difficult conversations, mastering understanding my emotions better, mastering hearing some of the lessons that I know, but hearing them from different perspectives and other men, being able to gain mastery over that. And the men's circle has been pivotal in the mastery of embracing my own masculinity, embracing my own journey, embracing my faults, and being accountable to the fact that when I'm showing up in the spaces that I occupy, I show up as a leader, but I show up as as just as vulnerable as a man as every single person that's on the panel tonight and that has been on the panel throughout the year. I really look forward to continuing these things. These I call them sessions. I don't call them shows, but I look forward to continuing these sessions in the upcoming year. I look forward to having the next Men's Circle conference. I look forward to the Men's Circle retreat next year. I look forward to a lot of things that the Men's Circle will be bringing in 2024. And I just really hope that a lot of men join us on this journey. I mean, shoot, if it's only the 5, 6, 7, 10, whatever of us, I'm okay with that. But I really see that there is a necessity for this in the lives of men. And I would encourage each of us to reach out to that man that maybe didn't know about this for this year and say, hey, look, there's some shows that we did or some sessions that we had over the year. You might want to take a look at a couple of these. You might want to hear. Matter of fact, here's a link. Go ahead and just jump on whenever you're in your car. Listen to that. Like we, in the space of poor communication and improving that, being intentional mentorship, and we talked about this at the conference about legacy, is a very intentional thing. And it is going to take us exposing these types of conversations to men so that they can have that feeling, Tim, like you said, like, man, having these conversations with other accountable men is life-changing. And so that's all I got. I'm really looking forward to 2024. For those of you who do celebrate the holidays, happy holidays to you. If you don't celebrate the holidays, happy December and November to you. But we will be back here in January 2024 with more content, more shows, and more men ready to grow and evolve to the next level. So as always, if you like this video, share it. If you do share this video, please like it. Happy to engage with you in the comment section. Always happy to engage with you also in the live chat if you're participating live. But until the next time, until the next year, one love, peace, and God bless. Thanks for sitting on the first row.